you, understanding in me, through me, as me, around me, through the Christ within me, and so it is. And today's word or scripture that is the focus is Proverbs 3:6. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. But you all know how we do it in here, so I'm going to flip it real quick. In all your ways, acknowledge her, and she will direct your path. And I turn it over to the Reverend Dr. Latanya Taylor.
Welcome, 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 everyone. Happy Sunday to you. I just want to remind you as we get ready to go into this message of understanding, to have your cameras off until we do our tribe talk at the end, just for those who are participating. Have your cameras off. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, just for your own good and for your own dignity later. So happy Sunday, everyone. Hopefully, you can see me. I want to switch share a moment just for the sake of us being on the same page. Thank you, Minister Dana, for first of all for holding it down for the month of June, I believe it was. And I missed you all, certainly. And so I want you to just take a minute to understand that we're going through the 12 powers, much like the 12 disciples. And so we have liberty as actualized women to reframe and reprogram our mind based on truth. This is not based on mysticism. This is not based on he said, she said. This is absolutely the spiritual truth that has been omitted, that we are continuing. Even in the metaphysical community, there is an imbalance focused on the masculine. And even in the New Thought community, sometimes they go so far into old dogma that even that has to be translated. But what I want to encourage you to do is to also do your own translation. So you see the 12 powers on the screen, and we'll make sure that it's also posted in the group. And so I just want to come on and give you a few things to consider for your month ahead, as I know that there's been so much energy that has been blasting off for all of us in the last few weeks, particularly in the last 2 weeks. The Schumann resonance has changed almost every day. Almost every day it's been different. On July 4th, there was a blast. On yesterday, there was a different kind of blast, or it became inverted. The day before, it was up and down. Another day before that, there was nothing. And strange things have been happening with the weather. Strange for man, but not strange for those of you who are tapped in, tuned in, and activated to the elements that are in you, because the same thing that's happening in the earth is also happening in you. There are volcanoes that are awakening in women. There are floods that are happening in our emotions. There's another awakening that's happening for us as women in remembering and returning to the divine feminine, the matriarchy. Most societies were matriarchal ruled, particularly those of us who are studying the genealogy. Even when we talk about the Choctaw, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Natchez, and all of these names of tribes that are also called Indians by colonizers. They had different names before then. They were just called the natives, and not Native American, because even that connects to the Spanish Wars. My point is, Even when you study the structures of those society, they were women led and women run. And when we think about a woman being in the lead, we oftentimes compare it to that of a man and the way that he leads, which we see a disassociation and erasure of the feminine completely. So in that, we want to find our balance in this month. The month of July, which is considered understanding in the traditional New Thought. But I want to go further for those adepts. And if you're not an adept, today you will become one. I want you to declare, I'm becoming an adept, no longer a neophyte. Huh? And when Neo came into the Matrix, Neo, it represents the neophyteness of his awakening. Some of you may feel like you're at the beginning stage of your awakening, but you're further along than you give yourself credit. Yes, it's still new, but I want to make you an adept today. And words do have power. And so when you say that you're understanding, what are you standing under? And then there's some people in the conscious community who started for years saying overstanding. Well, what are you standing over? Neither are balanced. The stand that we're making in our feminine and in the feminine powers is inner standing. Stand on the inside of who you are. The discipleship is traditionally represented by Thomas. Dana gave you a reading, and the color is gold. So how do you use this? You wear the colors. You study the colors. You pull the colors in. We also know this gold energy to be an Oshun energy. Now, many people only think of seduction when they think of Oshun. They think of beauty when they think of Oshun. But there are more. The feminine archetype of this energy is the sage. The sage can be a masculine or a feminine. The sage is the wise woman. Sometimes she is the crone, but there are some babies that are born with sage powers. You got to know your power. When we say something like, oh, she's been here before, that baby been here before. But most important, when we talk about these energies, I love how Fillmore gave you locations in the body, because sometimes we're all in our head, but we don't understand how these principles integrate with the colors, with the sounds, with the songs, with the dance. How do you embody the prayer, the discipleship, the disciple? How do you do it? Many of you who are in the Rebirth community, you are doing it in multiple ways. However, there is more because now we go to the forehead. The forehead. In the Ifa tradition, we call this your Ori. Your Ori is what guides you spiritually. Your Ori is where you get your messages from. Your Ori is not for sale. Your Ori is the thing that forms first. When the scripture says, I knew you when you were formed in your mother's womb. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you. What is the I? The I in I. The I in the I. The I am. I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. And this is the first thing that's formed. Well, of course, it's talking about the forehead, but you can't have a forehead without a head. And so today, for those of you who are actual members, not just supporters, but members of the REM community ministry, I want to invite you to a head blessing today. So you'll have a chance when we end to get your things together to bless your head. So I want to bring you a quick message, the discipleship of understanding and wisdom carriers. Are you a wisdom carrier? I hope every one of you say yes, because if you've been under the sound of my voice, under the sound of any of my spiritual mentors' voices, you are a wisdom carrier. This is the return of sage wisdom. It's not just in a book. It's in your DNA. It's in connecting to your ancestors. In Proverbs, it says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. I say, well, where you come up with understanding? Because understanding represents the process that after you've gotten the understanding, that you got to stand in it. Oh, come on, somebody. How many of you walk past it? How many of you visit it every now and then? How many of you forget about it? Oh, yeah, it's over there. Let me go pick it up. How many of you have altars that are unattended? How many of you got juicy, then got dehydrated? How many of you got juicy and then forgot that you activated? How many of you rose and then laid down the moment a test came? This is standing in it. In all thy getting, get understanding, but then you got to stand in it. You got to stand in it when your children test you. You got to stand in it when the dating life gets on your nerves. How do you stand in calling in what you desire? And then another scripture, Luke 10:39 says, Mary sat at Jesus's feet and heard his word. Interesting that he used Mary. Which Mary? Because it wasn't his mother that was sitting at his feet. There were several Marys. And the one that was the most profound is the one that Jesus fell in love with. Isn't that interesting? Mary Magdalene. But the patriarchy, particularly the dysfunctional, toxic, masculine patriarchy, tried to paint Mary Magdalene as a whore. But that's the one that many scholars say was a wife. Not a concubine, but the one that Jesus chose. So interesting that there are many Marys. Even the Marys represent an archetype. The maiden, the mother, and the crone. And then there's a few more. We've been so fed so much baby food that we're gaga. Feed me, feed me, feed me. Who are you feeding? What are you feeding? Are you feeding your faith? Are you feeding your fear? Are you feeding your fierce feminine? Or are you feeding the broke down version, victim version of the woman that's waiting on somebody to stand up to choose her? Who am I talking to? Because when we call on these ancestors, we're calling on not the dysfunctional ones, not just because they're in our bloodline. We thank them for their sacrifices. We give grace to them for what they did not know, that they did not know. But we also have to speak to our ancestral line and call on the ones in our line that was free, the ones that were liberated, the ones that had understanding, the ones who had codes. Maybe they even lost their life because they wouldn't lay down. They stood up. When we call on these ancestors, we have to call on the ones that you don't imagine them going through a slave ship experience. Sometimes your imagination, we just came out of imagination last month. How has your imagination been fed by television? A false narrative. All of us watch Roots, not knowing that they made up and embellished so much of this story. How many of us understand through studying genealogy that maps have been changed? What's up is really down. So what we call south is really north. What's east is really west. So that means that everything that you've been taught that's good might be a little bit challenging. And everything that you've been taught was bad and scary and not for us, that's the thing you need to look at. That's why they're afraid of Haiti. Oh, baby, you got to watch with the eyes of the sage, of wisdom, not with these eyes all the time, not with these ears all the time, unless you've activated these gates. Come on now, juicy she roses, juicy butterflies, you've activated these gates. When you look at it with these eyes, then you will listen to other male sages that I have often directed you to. See, I'm not just name dropping. I'm dropping crumbs for you to go and say, let me study and show myself approved. Let me study and go see what's happening. Rod Hayes told us that these were conjure wars. Now, I didn't understand this. See, I didn't understand it. I heard it, but I didn't understand it. And then I heard it again. That's why faith comes by hearing, because maybe on the fourth or the fifth time, something clicks inside of your DNA, inside of your matrix, inside of yourself, that puts two and two together and say, oh, I get it now. Now, I have been hearing Rod Hayes talk about conjure wars. He talked about the Spanish Wars, the 1800s, the 1900s, but I didn't get it. But I've been saying it before I had the historical data to feed the intellectual minds who want to argue and who said, well, I was taught. Well, I studied, I did Black studies. I have a degree in African-American studies. I didn't get it, because all of that educated foolism will block and blurry the lines of being able to hear the demarcations of truth. And I have been saying, that we are under a spell in the collective consciousness. Anytime you see people fight for their limitations, attack you for putting out truth, move away from you because they think that it's witchcraft, or they think that that's not of God, or you got to practice it this way, a spell. And many people are keepers of the conjure on our people. Do you know what it is to conjure? Juicy butterflies know what it is to conjure. That's a thing a woman does. But when they find your magic, they can use your magic against you. These were conjure wars. Conjure is when you pulling in, you calling in something, you pulling in something that you cannot see until you see it. And one of the ways in the 1800s and the 1900s that the conjure happened is through death and threat and the removal of data. I didn't intend to go here this morning. But many of you need to know this. You're breaking several 100-year spell off of you, but you are just becoming aware that you are the active one that's breaking the spell off of you. But there were other people who already prayed for you not to ever be under it. And that's why you came out of your mother's womb different. That's why some of you are the black sheep. That's why some of you suffered a little bit, because when you get to a place as an adept, you cannot lean on your old understanding. You have to lean on other ways of understanding Christ consciousness in you as the light, as God, as holy I am presence. So the matriarch as a disciple is not just a devotee. The devotee portion of the process that many of you have gone through, from the introductory fab factor to the 7-week journey, the Juicy Shero's journey now, that's devotion. The next level is the matriarch, the disciple. I've been a disciple even before I knew I was a disciple. Many of you are disciples. When you come in here on Sunday, you're getting more information on discipleships. Sometimes the discipleship you think you are is just the discipleship that you may have been in another lifetime, but the discipleship that you need is the one that oftentimes you are the most tested around in your life. It may not be understanding. It could have been imagination from last month. It could have been love from another month. Pick which one. It could have been wisdom. It could have been power. It could have been strength. The discipleship of understanding is not just learning something, quoting it back, or getting a piece of paper for it. It is embodied gnosis or Gnostic, just like the Gnostic Gospels, which is why on Wednesday we go into the Gnostic book of Mary, because she has been forgotten. How many preachers are preaching from the book of Mary? It is an embodied Gnosticism or gnosis, spelled with a G. It is the living breath of revelation. You all, come on now. Say yes if you get living breath of revelation. You get information, you don't know where it comes from, and then you hear something that confirms what you already been getting. This is why I was talking about the Haitian people. Rod told us in the Conjure Wars that when the Haitians wake up, because that's where the conjure started. When the Haitians started to chant for an army much bigger than them, and they defeated them and left them in fear. This is why they came against the Haitian people. And the Haitian, something woke up in the Haitian people in New York City, in Miami, that told ICE, don't try it. Don't do it. Oh, it was beautiful. Oh, they were chanting and they were singing. Oh, they were chanting and they were singing. It's something about the Haitian people. What is it about the Creole and the Creole? What is it about the singing and the chanting? What is it? Because it's the same thing that we have to do for ourselves. That's what we have to do when we pull down strongholds. Christ consciousness is not just something you follow, a badge that you do. Christ consciousness is something that you remember. It is your discipleship expressed through you in a unique way. Now, in the feminine, the sage archetype. Now, I've been told that I'm a sage. And I'm finally standing in it. It's not always easy because the sage is the one who sees beyond. My mother told me when I was born that I was born with my eyes open, that I scared everybody in the room. Your birth story matters. You need to have conversations with your elders and ask them about your birth story. What was your state of mind that your mother was in? What was her observations? What did she say about you? What did she speak over your life? Because oftentimes your gift is in that, but so is your curse. You are the only one that can break that. For so long, I just thought that they were saying I was mean or something like that. But my mom was saying I was looking through people. And then in my life, people would say, why are you looking like that? Oh, you look like you mad. But I'm looking through you. I'm not looking at you. The sage is the secret keeper of truth, the translator of mysteries. Her path is not always loud. It is precise. It's timeless. It's discerning. This archetype has nothing to do with age, but it's about access. Can you access the ancient wisdom that is attached to your assignment? Ooh, that's a question for somebody. Can you access the ancient wisdom that's attached to your assignment? She navigates the paradoxes, both the stillness and the movement. She's a seer and she's a scholar. This discipleship requires depth, not drama. This disciple, that means everybody can't be your friend even. They might want to, and you want to. I can't tell you how many errors I have made in wanting to be friends and wanting to be social and wanting to fit in, where I had to dim down my light or pretend like I didn't know, pretend like I didn't see something in that person or hear something that they said about their values that I knew would bump up against my assignment, not my values, because that's personal, but my assignment. So drama oftentimes flees from the sage because she calls it out, or she deals with it in a way where you get to the core. You cannot borrow your knowing. You got to earn it. You got to go through the process. The sage doesn't earn it by Googling it. The sage doesn't earn it by TikToking it. It might be a beginning. It might be an arrow. It might be a ... But you got to go into the sacred chambers of study, experience, surrender, and silence. Some of us are too spiritually lazy and you want to blame it on something else. Understanding birth, strategy, structure, stability, all missing in the shallow end. These are what we call spiritual trends. You know, the woman has, the goddess technology has gone through a spiritual trend. You know, where everybody wants to be sensual and do sex magic and all of that, but has no substance. They're in the shallow end, and their disciples end up having to say, why am I here again? Why am I wounded? Because you opened up something and you didn't know how to close it. The historical, let me close out with this. The historical and the mystical sages are our lineage of light. And there are examples. They say that math was attributed to a man, but what about Hypatia of Alexandria, a mathematician and a scholar? What about Seshash, in a Kemetic deity, the goddess of wisdom, the keeper of records? What about Sophia, in the Gnostic tradition? Sophia is very important for us to continue to study and talk about, by the way. The Sophia anointing, the Sophia is a portal. Sophia is a powerful energy. I'll tell y'all something on the side about Sophia too. The embodiment of divine wisdom, betrayed yet redeemed, the Gnosis or the Gnostic. Queen Makeda or Sheba, not just a beauty or a diplomat, but a woman of understanding who interrogated Solomon's wisdom and left with her own. She asked questions, in other words, Sheba. She didn't bow down, like Lilith didn't bow down. And of course, the living ones are sages like Harriet Tubman, Maya Angelou, Iyanla Vanzant, others who are walking amongst us. And that's why we call their names in our prayers. Now, in closing, the return of the divine feminine is the return to right order. I have said this to you all before. This was my return to divine order. Because when I took my metaphysical self, my coaching self, my degreed, my psychological mind teaching self, my program management self, my working in government and in the mayor's office and doing executive this and that. I took all of that, my praying self. And when I began to speak to my womb and to my grandmothers in my matriarchal line, the order just started to line up in my life. From reading to workshop, to process, to living shop, to choosing who my husband is, to ordering my steps in terms of clients. And when my ego would take over, the more I would order my steps again, going into the juice. Oh my God. So the matriarch returns not to dominate, but to restore. The matriarch returns to bring divine balance through sacred comprehension and compassion, because she understands what she birthed. There's no species that does not come through the womb of a female. You got to come through a woman. So it would make sense that she would be God. Understanding is the seat of discernment. You can't have understanding or understanding and not have some discernment. And discernment is a medicine. Sometimes we learn trial by fire, but the sage doesn't react. She remembers, she recalibrates. She begins to recalibrate the world all around her when she recalibrates and rebirths herself. So this month, I invite you to be sage. I invite you to remember Deborah in the Bible, a sage, a leader, a feminine leader. And those that you can think of that are sages or who have been sages in your life. We honor them here. They are, you are, because they are standing on the inside, the inner standing, and sharing it with the world. So I thank you all for joining us today on YouTube if you're watching. And now we're going to go into the second half of our time together, where we incorporate our music, our meditation, our specific prayers, the desires of our heart, where we do woman's work. This is the sanctuary of the woman. This is the sanctuary of the mother. And so any moment can be the moment that you give birth to yourself. And so I invite you to clear your laps. I invite you, if you're in your bed even, to get yourself in a position where you're not multitasking, you're not scrolling, not double dipping, that you're staying present with yourself, and just take a breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, we invite you to join us in the portal. We invite you to give a love offering. Cash App, Rebirth by LT on Cash App, and Rebirth Ministries on PayPal. So we thank you for watching on YouTube, but we're going to go into this meditation, and then we're going to go into our prayer time on the other side. Thank you all on YouTube. Stay right where you are, those who are in the room. It's a privilege to be in the room. We want you in